Please welcome Jay Stang with Oathkeepers.
Good afternoon. Guys, you haven't seen me walking around all day today. I just magically appeared out of the stage. So I am the vice president of the Texas Organization of Oathkeepers, and I'm also on the board of directors of the national organization, which puts me somewhere on the public enemy list for the Department of Homeland Security. I'm also on the public enemies list because I'm white, I'm Christian, I was homeschooled, I'm an Eagle Scout, I'm a disgruntled Iraq War veteran, I oppose abortion, illegal immigration, and every other platform, plank of the Democratic Party platform. That makes me a domestic extremist. Believe me, I'm a time bomb, ready to go. Especially when my DVR doesn't record the next episode of Fringe like I want it to. But I'm not here to talk about that. I do like to eat Texas barbecue, not what they call barbecue in the Carolinas, which is shredded meat with vinegar on it. It's not barbecue. I'm here to talk to you today about the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012. There's a National Defense Authorization Act passed every year. That's how the military is funded. That's constitutional. The Constitution requires us to fund the military and to authorize its funding every year. Without a budget, the military can only exist, the Army can only exist for 2 years without authorization. So we do this every year. It's not a big deal. Most years they will slip a provision into the NDAA dealing with some specific issue the military faces. Last year when they were debating and they introduced the NDAA, they put several sections into the NDAA that were out of the ordinary, and that is they're breathtaking in their scope. If you haven't read the text of the NDAA, I'm going to read some of it to you today. It's 1,000 pages, so you don't need to read it all because you don't want to know about funding levels for Arleigh Burke destroyers and Marine Corps tilt-rotor helicopter aircraft, but you do need to know about sections 1021 and 1024 because they directly affect you and your liberty. Now, the story that Chip told, these kind of stories are going to multiply like rabbits because as the police and other federal agents become more aware of their apparent lack of check on their power, they will begin to exercise it in ways that most of us will find distasteful. This act was introduced by Representative Buck McKeon. He's the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, the HASC, and as well with significant input and guidance from John McCain and Carl Levin, both senators. John McCain from Arizona, Carl Levin from Michigan. It was passed overwhelmingly by the Republican House, passed by the Democratic Senate, and signed into law by a Democratic president. So this is a bipartisan effort. It was signed into law on New Year's Eve. The sections of 1021 and 1024, these are so repugnant to the Constitution, to the Declaration of Independence, to every element of the evolution of political thought going back to the Magna Carta in 1215. Even the Magna Carta is an improvement on the National Defense Authorization Act. And it's even worse than what the Soviets faced in the Soviet Union, the Russian people. The Soviets would put people in jail, but they gave them a trial, and they gave them a sentence, and they let them go when the sentence was completed. Now, if you lived, you have to live to complete the sentence, but if you survived, then they let you go. Representative Mac Thornberry of the Texas Panhandle, he had this to say regarding the NDAA, and I quote, "The bill adds explicit protections for American citizens, even American citizens who have joined al-Qaeda to take up arms against the United States. Some people have argued," these are his words, "some people have argued that these provisions allow a president to detain American citizens within the United States indefinitely if he brands them a terrorist."
What is the definition of a terrorist?
We're getting to that. Representative Thornberry is wrong. So wrong, he's either mentally defective or he's willfully lying to us. The paragraph he quotes from section 1021 says this, E, authorities, "Nothing in this section shall be construed to affect existing law or authorities relating to the detention of United States citizens, lawful resident aliens of the United States, or any other persons who are captured or arrested in the United States." The unfortunate part of this is Yasser Hamdi, Jose Padilla were both American citizens. Anwar al-Awlaki was an American citizen. Dirtbags, yes. Traitors, yes. But they were still American citizens. So the explicit protections I don't see them because al-Awlaki was killed by a Hellfire missile in Yemen, and Hamdi and Padilla are still in jail. One of them I think got a trial, but they're still in jail. What does that really mean? What does that section of authority mean? It doesn't mean anything. Because one reason Obama wanted to veto it, because he said, I already have this power. Not because he was afraid it would infringe on our civil rights, but he said, because I've already got this. I don't need this bill. I think he doesn't like redundancy. Yeah, and the bad part about this is Senator Kelly Ayotte from New Hampshire, who's supposed to be one of the Tea Party freshman class, right, of last year, or 2010. She backs him up. She says, she wrote a letter to a California man, I found this on the internet. She says to him, the first section, 1021, is a reaffirmation of the current authority of the president to detain covered persons pursuant to the authorization for the use of military force, which Congress passed in the aftermath of September 11, 2001. So the reason that he was against it before he was for it is because he said, I already have this power. I don't need it codified, because I suppose he's afraid that if they codify it, they might put some other restrictions on his power. Senator Ayotte also refers to the case of ex parte Grillin, which was the case during World War II, where an American citizen joined the Nazis and then attempted to infiltrate New York Harbor in a little mini submarine, like in the movie Captain America. You guys see that? Good movie. She says that just as we're at war with the Nazis, we're also at war with Al-Qaeda. Okay, December 8, 1941, what happened? Congress declared war constitutionally on the Empire of Japan and Nazi Germany. Where was the same declaration of war against Al-Qaeda? Never happened. All we have is an AUMF, which is an open-ended, vague, endless commitment to allow the president to do whatever he wants for however long he wants to do it. Senator John McCain says, if an American citizen, now remember Kelly Ayotte is from the Live Free or Die state. Just, you don't remember New Hampshire, Live Free or Die, but she backs up Obama.
This way.
Senator McCain says if an American citizen, this is off a YouTube video, is a member of Al-Qaeda in a foreign land, we should be able to use a Predator drone to kill that person. We did this to Anwar al-Awlaki, an American citizen, a dirtbag and a traitor, but still an American citizen. Senator Lindsey Graham says, if you want a lawyer, shut up, you aren't getting a lawyer. I hear he'll be starring in his own action movie soon. What does the Constitution say about Americans who make war against their own government? It says plenty. Article 3, Section 3 of the Constitution says, treason against the United States shall consist only in levying war against them or in adhering to their enemies, giving them aid and comfort. No person shall be convicted of treason unless on the testimony of 2 witnesses to the same overt act or on confession in open court. The Congress shall have power to declare the punishment of treason. So Congress can declare whether you get beaten with pillows or you get shot. We don't need additional legislation that tells us how to deal with the process Americans who are making war against the United States. We have all we need right here in Article 3. Article 3 is important in what it prescribes for the treatment of trainers. It requires either the testimony of 2 witnesses, so no secret testimony can be given to convict you, or it requires you to confess in open court. So they cannot take you in the back room, waterboard you, and get a confession out of you that is admissible in court for treason. It has to be in open court where it can be documented. Because what do they say about corruption and sunlight? Right? It has to be done in public. No secret charges, no secret forced confessions. Furthermore, Congress has the power to set the penalty for treason. So John McCain can sate his bloodlust by defining the punishment for treason. Because he seems like that kind of a guy. Speaking of making war against the United States, what about Senator Ayotte declaring America to be part of the battlefield? That's the definition of treason, as the Constitution says it is. So can we not say that maybe Senator Kelly Ayotte could be classified possibly as committing treason? How is that not making war against the United States? The proper procedure for dealing with Anwar al-Awlaki constitutionally would have been to extract him from Yemen, try him for treason, and then execute him. We did that to Osama bin Laden. We flew into Pakistan over enemy territory. We dropped into a military town at the military academy in Abbottabad. We extracted him from his house, and then we dumped his body in the sea. How could we not do this in Yemen, which is a much smaller country, much easier to get at him, much less defended, it would be so much easier to do. And remember, we went after Osama bin Laden like this. We hunted down, or the Israelis hunted down Adolf Eichmann for 20 years. It's ridiculous to say, well, he's in Yemen. What do you want, the police to go get him? Well, we do it all the time. SEAL Team 6 just dropped into Somalia and capped a bunch of pirates and rescued 2 Americans. So this vaunted SEAL Team 6, who's featured in the new movie Act of Valor, this is like, eating breakfast for them. It would be easy for them to do it. If we follow the Constitution, we'll get the same result, a dead terrorist, a dead traitor, but we'll be following the Constitution. The problem with this, and I talked to my congressman's district director about this issue, and his position was basically this: if it's too much of a pain in the rear, we'll just kill him. He sneered at me when I suggested extracting him in the same manner we used to get Osama bin Laden, which was a more difficult and complex operation. And if you don't think it'll ever happen to you, you have to think again. How many people here are in the Tea Party and one of the many Tea Parties? Okay, congratulations. You have won designation as a terrorist. In the eyes of the U.S. government, specifically Vice President Biden, you are a terrorist. He has said, if you are in the Tea Party, you are terrorists. So, if that is true, then what's to stop a Hellfire missile from dropping in for breakfast one day? Because you're a terrorist, al-Awlaki's a terrorist, they killed him with a Hellfire, why can't they kill you with a Hellfire? And this is the problem with saying, let's get this guy, he's bad, oh don't worry, it'll never happen to you, or he's just a terrorist, don't worry about him. That's the big problem with doing it this way. So what do these sections of the NDAA actually say? Why are they so bad? I'm going to read them to you, but first, I'd like to read you a letter from one of our Ohio members, Jim Singleton. He is in the state chapter organization of Oathkeepers in Ohio, and he's also an active duty law enforcement officer. And so he wrote this letter to his leadership to tell them what he will not be doing under this new era of the National Defense Authorization Act. His name is Jim Singleton. He says, "Greetings and salutations. It's unfortunate that I have to write this letter. However, in light of current events, it's inevitable. Just days ago, the Congress passed the NDAA. This in itself was necessary. However, this bill was an insidious piece of verbiage that, for all intents and purposes, destroys the foundation of everything we believe in and took an oath to uphold. To me, the possibility of those citizens and others under my protection being spirited off in the middle of the night by agents of the military, oh, it gets worse, then being summarily incarcerated without access to a judge or jury are insufferable and intolerable acts." You know what the intolerable acts are, right? That was one of the straws that finally broke the camel's back in the 1700s. It will be argued that this only applies to foreign persons or others suspected of terrorism. But there are far too many avenues available to apply this to any group to which any administration may take umbrage with. Have you heard about some of the guys in Gitmo that weren't terrorists, but they were there because someone in Afghanistan said, "You stole my goat, so I'm going to call up ISAF and say, hey, this guy's a terrorist, and then I get my goat back." There are guys like that. And so how do you know that's not going to happen in the U.S.? A jilted lover, a sneaky business associate could put you away forever just to get them out of the way so they can, hook up with your wife or whatever. This is going to happen because we're all human beings, right? When growing up, and especially during our training in the academy, because remember this is a police officer, we're instructed that the constitutional rights of all must be upheld at all times, as well as the respect for all people we come in contact with or represent. This section of the NDAA attempts to remove those rights which are enumerated and given to us by our Creator, and places them in the hands of the office of the President of the United States to be disregarded at whim. Mitt Romney does not like Obama. He says we need to get rid of him. He says he's misguided, he's ruining our country. But Mitt Romney is still perfectly willing to place all of these rights in the hands of Obama to do with as he will. Because he said he would have signed the NDAA. So he said he's very willing to set up a capricious tyranny in which he doesn't like Obama for all these reasons why he's bad for America, but he's still willing to give all of your constitutional rights to Obama to do with as he will. Do you see a problem there?
Doppelganger.
Yeah, it's a wider doppelganger. That's right. And in those words lies a conundrum. Do we as police officers, sheriffs, deputies, and others who have taken the oath to uphold the Constitution now turn our back on that very oath? Do we now turn against the very same people that entrusted us with the most sacred duty to serve and protect them? If in fact we follow a rule of law such as this bill enacts, it would mean that the oath we all took meant nothing. We are obliged to follow all lawful orders given to us, but we cannot do this blindly. History has seen the results of these acts and has judged them accordingly. I can only ask all of you to take a moment to reflect upon all we are taught and hold dear. The people we serve, deserve and demand our highest respect for it. It is through them and them alone that we were given this oath. Do we simply turn a blind eye for the sake of political expediency and lose our respect? Is a few pieces of silver so dear that we would sell our honor for it? How will we explain to our friends and loved ones why members of our community disappeared, or how they will see us when they realize that when their time comes, we won't be there for them? I believe that if and when those orders come, I cannot in good faith and in strict observance to my oath allow myself to be a part of them. I would hope that members of our military, in accordance to the articles of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, would also refuse them as well. When that time comes, I will do exactly as I have sworn to do. I will serve and protect those under my care, so help me God. And then he signs it by saying, also I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me, from Isaiah 6:8. Respectfully submitted, James B. Singleton, Secretary, Ohio Oathkeepers, Law Enforcement Liaison, Ohio. When you were coming up here today, did you see the sign of the guy named TJ who's missing? In a baseball cap, looks like he's 22, 23, looks like an able-bodied guy. He's been missing for 3 weeks. You're going to see a lot more signs like that. Able-bodied men in their 20s and 30s who just disappear in the middle of the night. And no one's going to know any better. People are going to think he's kidnapped by drug dealers, or he ran off, or he got his girlfriend pregnant and couldn't deal with it. But you're going to see that a lot more, and it's not that they ran off, is that someone took them away. And you're going to see that a lot, because the families aren't going to know any different. All they're going to know is their son, their cousin, or whatever is gone. And you're going to see a lot of those signs popping up all over the country. Okay, now here I want to read to you the text of the offensive and unconstitutional sections of the NDAA. Now, like I said before, Section 1021 and 22 are the intolerable acts of this law. 23 and 24 are logistical and housekeeping articles. Section 1021, affirmation of authority of the armed forces of the United States to detain covered persons pursuant to the authorization for use of military force. This is the military we're talking about. Congress affirms that the authority of the President to use all necessary and appropriate force pursuant to the AUMF includes the authority for the armed forces of the United States to detain covered persons as defined in subsection B, pending disposition under the law of war. This is a very important paragraph because it says that it's not expanding existing law. The AUMF is existing law. And it says that the detention of these covered persons will be pursuant to the law of war. The law of war provides for the procedures that hold prisoners of war, enemy prisoners of war on a battlefield in wartime. So it's saying that this is pursuant to the law of war. This is why Senator Ayotte says the United States is now part of the battlefield. Because people captured on the battlefield, America will now be treated as enemy prisoners of war. Covered persons. Now the definitions are important, right, in law. A covered person under this section is any person as follows. A person who planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11, 2001, or harbored those responsible for those attacks. A person who is a part of or substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners, including any person who has committed a belligerent act or has directly supported such hostilities in aid of such enemy forces. This is important for so many reasons. The first is Section 1. If you planned or helped commit 9/11, okay, that makes sense. People say, oh, that's great, and they move along with their daily lives. The problem is, when you go to the second paragraph, it says associated forces. That term is not defined in the NDAA. Associated forces could mean anything. Who has watched Fox News, probably 2005, 2006, and seen anti-war protesters on Fox News being accused of giving aid and comfort to the enemy? I see it all the time when I was sitting in my hooch in Kuwait. Okay, this is dangerous because that is part of the definition of treason under the Constitution, giving aid and comfort to enemies. So they're trying to make a parallel in your mind that if you are protesting the war or opposed to the war, then you are giving aid and comfort to the enemy. Because a dude in a cave in Afghanistan has his Fox News turned on, and he sees an anti-war protester say the war is bad, and he says, I did not have the strength to carry on, but now that I've seen an anti-war protester in New York City opposing the war, now I have the strength to go bomb more Americans. That's what they're really saying is happening. Does anybody believe that?
No.
93% of the Afghan people have no idea that 9/11 existed. They have no idea that the World Trade Center towers came down. They have no idea that someone flew something into the Pentagon. They have never even heard of Washington, D.C. or New York City. All they know is that there are Americans on the ground in their country trying to kill them. We make the mistake of assuming that Afghans have laptops and smartphones and are connected to the internet and on Facebook. This is not true. The Afghans are stuck in the 7th century, and if they like it there, let them stay there. But we cannot assume that they know as much as we know and are hooked in to the global tsunami of information like we are. So an associated force could be anybody. That's up to the discretion of the government to define what that is. And when you let the government define things like this, we're all in trouble. And it says if you're engaged in hostilities against one of its coalition partners, and that's not the United States, that's a foreign country. So what if you have a country that is committing flagrant human rights abuses against its own people, and you decide that you're going to speak out against this, and you're going to go to that country and cause trouble because they're killing their own people, but it just happens to be one of our coalition partners? Guess what? That could be construed as you engaging in hostilities against one of the United States coalition partners. We have to go through these because this is possible, and we have to realize the consequences and the possible implications of what the law says. If it's now illegal to engage in hostilities against a coalition partner of the United States, Pakistan is a coalition partner of the United States. Pakistan is also an enemy that no one realizes of the United States. But if you engage in hostility against Pakistan, is anybody going to say that's a bad thing to do? The law says it is. The NDAA says that you can be detained by the United States military if you decide that Pakistan is an enemy of the United States and you need to do something about it. Or if you're hiking on the border of Pakistan and India and you cross over to the border of Pakistan inadvertently, you're illegally entering Pakistan and you're here to commit mayhem and cause destruction and to subvert Islam. That's what we're talking about here. Lawyers can do sneaky things. I've got a brother who's a lawyer. He's sneaky. Disposition under the law of war. The disposition of a person under the law of war, as described in subsection A, may include the following. Detention under the law of war without trial until the end of the hostilities authorized by the authorization for use of military force. How long did John McCain say we'd be in Afghanistan and Iraq? 100 years. They could put you in jail until you die, without a trial, without a sentence, without being convicted of anything. Look at that guys in Gitmo. They're probably all dirtbags and terrorists, but it's not been proven in a court of law. So technically, they're innocent of everything. They're just being held there. The government knows they're dangerous, but it doesn't want to prove it in a court of law. And the question is, if we know so conclusively that these guys are desperate terrorists, wouldn't it be a slam dunk in a court of law? Wouldn't it be so easy to convict them of everything we're saying they're guilty of if they're just so obviously a bunch of terrorists? It would be very easy to do that. It would have been easy to convict al-Awlaki because he has YouTube videos up saying death to America. So it would have been a slam dunk in a United States court to prove this guy guilty of terrorism and to kill him and execute him. But we don't want to go through that because we don't want to follow the Constitution. And I say we, I'm speaking of the U.S. government. Okay, the disposition can also include trial under Chapter 47A of Title 10 U.S.C., amended by the Military Commissions Act. The Military Commissions Act, you remember, was sponsored by John Warner, Senator from Virginia. The Military Commissions Act removed the protection of habeas corpus by statute. That's constitutional, but it created such an uproar that that was removed and overturned. Now, the reason that habeas corpus can be removed by statute is because if you do it, that's a dead giveaway that you're up to no good. That's it's like popping a flare up in the sky that the government is out to get you. You can be transferred for trial by an alternative court or competent tribunal having lawful jurisdiction. So this can shuffle you between federal courts. Now, the worst part of this, listen closely. You can be transferred to the custody or control of the person's country of origin, that would be if you're not American, or any other foreign country, or any other foreign entity. What are some examples of foreign entities? KGB, now known as the FSB, the Russian intelligence services. You can be transferred to the Syrian intelligence services, to the Israeli intelligence services, to the Saudi intelligence services. The Saudi intelligence services, they take Christians and they beat them on the soles of the feet with sticks, and they torture them in other ways. You can be transferred under this law from your house in Conroe to a cell in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. This is not conjecture. It says it directly in the law. You can be transferred to any foreign country or any other foreign entity. This is in the law, and this is United States law right now. Nothing in this section is intended to limit or expand the authority of the President or the scope of the authorization for use of military force. And remember, Kelly Ayotte said the President already has all this power, so it doesn't need to be expanded. Section 1022. Covered persons. The requirement in paragraph 1 shall apply to any person whose detention is authorized under section 1031, who is determined. Now, this requirement is military custody. That means the military is required to take you into custody. Any person who's determined to be a member of or part of Al-Qaeda or any associated force, there's that vague term again, or that acts in conjunct coordination with or pursuant to the direction of Al-Qaeda and has participated in the course of planning or carrying out an attack or attempted attack against the United States or its coalition partners. Now this sounds cut and dried, but how much of the law and the Constitution do they ignore right now? Do you think that a clever legal construction is going to constrain them at all? They're going to do whatever they want because they do it all the time right now. This is the problem with calling an Article 5 convention to do a balanced budget amendment. Don't do it. Waiver for national security. Now, you think you're protected because, you're not doing any of this stuff. You aren't involved in any of these activities. I got bad news for you. Everything in the military has a waiver. You can be waivered for just about anything. And we have a waiver right here. And what's the waiver for? Can anybody guess what it's for? You've been hearing these two words for 11 years now. Everything is done in the name of this. National security. That's correct. The Secretary of Defense may, in consultation with the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and the Director of National Intelligence, waive the requirement of paragraph 1 if the Secretary submits to Congress a certification in writing that such a waiver is in the national security interest of the United States. How many congressmen read bills that they vote on? What if I was
maybe one,
a wiseacre in the Secretary of Defense's office, and I decided that I was going to write in Chris Matthews' name to be submitted for a waiver, and then we're going to go pick him up? How many congressmen are going to notice that Chris Matthews or Sean Hannity's name is written in this bill? They don't read it anyway, so you could put Mickey Mouse in there, Mr. Rogers, and no one would know. I'm certain that congressional staff members do this all the time anyway, because no one reads 2,500-page bills. So any protection you thought you might have had can be wavered away. And if the Secretary of Defense thinks you're a big enough threat, it can do the same to you. So there are no protections whatsoever contained in this bill for American citizens. Now, there's a YouTube video that Alan West put out where he claims to set everybody's mind at ease with all these supposed new powers and abilities. And he said, look, if you think that this law enables us to take American citizens' custody, you're wrong, and here's why. I'm going to read this to you. The requirement to detain a person in military custody under this section does not extend to citizens of the United States. If you hear that in passing, that might sound good, that I'm protected. But it doesn't, because all it's saying is that the requirement to detain you in military custody does not extend to the United States citizen. So instead of the military being required to take you into custody and no other choice, now you can be taken into custody by the military, by the FBI, the CIA, the Secret Service, the DEA, the ATF. If you haven't paid your student loans, the Department of Education, anybody can take you into custody. If you're not a United States citizen, only the military. But if you're a U.S. citizen, you get your pick. So you can be taken into custody by any agency of the United States government under this law. And this is what Representative Alan West, retired Army Lieutenant Colonel, wants you to think, that this is a silver shield of protection. He's wrong. We're engaged in a nationwide effort to peacefully remove, and I want to stress peacefully, remove, and in case anybody's watching this gets the wrong idea, we are engaged in a nationwide effort to peacefully remove from office any representative or senator who voted for this bill. In this case, we don't accept the excuse that politics is a team sport. We have no recall provision in Texas, but we do have elections. We as Oath Keepers will never endorse a candidate as we are nonpartisan, but we can list in detail why an incumbent should be removed from office by the people. And we'll show up to town hall meetings and yell at them and insult them and tell people what they've done wrong. We're working in Montana right now to help Denny Rayburg, a Republican, and both senators, Tester and Baucus, pursue other opportunities in the private sector. This is a bipartisan effort. We don't care which party they're a member of. We have adopted the scorched earth policy. If you voted for it, you're out. We've suffered enough fools in Congress long enough. We have enough of senators who say that politics is a team sport. We don't need any more compromises or backroom deals when our basic fundamental protections from warrantless searches, detention, and kangaroo courts is gone. Even the Soviet Union tried people, sentenced them, and then released them when their sentence was served. This bill, you don't even get a trial. Not even a fake trial. There's just no trial. You're there. We need to wake up and remove from our minds the fiction that it cannot happen here, because it is right now. If you say you don't have time to do politics, don't worry. Politics will have time to do you. If you don't want to learn history, you'll get to experience it for yourselves. If you're not familiar with the Soviet dissident Alexander Solzhenitsyn, please make yourself familiar with him and his work. One of the books he wrote was called The Gulag Archipelago. One famous passage from the book is him lamenting the loss of his freedom. And it reads like this: "And how we burned in the camps later, thinking, what would things have been like if every security operative, when he went out at night to make an arrest, had been uncertain whether he would return alive and had to say goodbye to his family? Or if during periods of mass arrests, for example in Leningrad, when they arrested a quarter of the entire city, people had not simply sat there in their lairs, paling with terror at every bang of the downstairs door and at every step on the staircase, but had understood they had nothing left to lose and had boldly set up in the downstairs hall an ambush of half a dozen people with axes, hammers, pokers, or whatever else in hand. The organs would very quickly have suffered a shortage of officers and transport, and notwithstanding all of Stalin's thirst, the cursed machine would have ground to a halt. If we didn't love freedom enough, and even more, we had no awareness of the real situation. Solzhenitsyn says we purely and simply deserved everything that happened afterward. If you have cheered the Patriot Act, the Intelligence Reform Act, the Military Commissions Act, the existence of the prison at Guantanamo Bay, you are deceiving yourself. You purely and simply will deserve everything that happens to you. When the head of the local Fox News Tea Party is dragged out of his house kicking and screaming with a black bag over his head, I'm going to sit back and laugh. Because that is what they wanted. They wanted to get dang terrorists. And guess what? You're the terrorist now. The Army National Guard is recruiting right now for internment and resettlement specialists. Who are they interning and resettling? You. I'm going to close with a poem that everybody has probably heard before from a German named Friedrich Niemöller. He's an anti-Nazi theologian and a Lutheran pastor in World War II. He penned a famous poem which is altered from time to time for specific purposes. And a modern version of the poem that I constructed might sound something like this. First they came for the terrorists, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't a terrorist. Then they came for the Occupy groups, and I didn't speak out because I wasn't in the Occupy groups. Then they came for the militia members, and I didn't speak out because those guys are dangerous and scary. But then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. If you do not take a stand for politically unpopular people like Anwar al-Awlaki, sooner or later they'll be knocking on your door. Thank you very much.
All right.